forum for the candidates for California Assembly's 37th District. We are coming to you live from the Community Environmental Council's hub in downtown Santa Barbara. We thank them for their cooperation in making this space available to us. Thank you also to Silvio Uribe of TransLPro, who will be providing simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish. Thanks also to TV Santa Barbara for live streaming this forum and recording it for future viewing on our YouTube channel via the Santa Barbara League's website, lwvsantabarbara.org. Before we start, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land that we are on belongs to the Chumash people of Santa Barbara. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place their home. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. We hope this forum will inform you, the voters, of the candidates' views on issues of interest to you. Note that the League neither supports nor opposes any candidate or political party. In case I forget to remind you at the end, we have a critical election on November 5th. You can check to make sure that your voter registration is up to date, make sure your address is correct, etc., at voterstatus.sos.ca.gov. If it needs to be updated, you can re-register to vote at registertovote.ca.gov. All registered voters in California will be receiving a ballot in the mail it will be mailed on October 7th, beginning then. So be sure to register by the October 21st deadline so that you receive your ballot packet in the mail. Please remember to vote. For those of you here with us, if you have questions, please write them on the cards you were given as you came in and give them back to one of our volunteers. We will screen them and sort the audience questions at the break. Questions must be addressed to both candidates, not to one in particular. In the interest of time, we ask that you please hold any applause until the break and then until the end of the forum. Also, please silence your cell phones and refrain from video recording of the forum. TV Santa Barbara is the only authorized recorder. Thank you for your cooperation. All of you are welcome to join the League and to make a tax-deductible donation in order to finance voter education programs such as this. Go to the Santa Barbara League of Women Voters website at lwvsantabarbara.org in order to do that. Both candidates for State Assembly representing the 37th District are here with us this evening, Greg Hart and Sari Dominguez. Thank you both for attending and for running for office. Here is how the forum will work. We use the traditional League of Women Voters process and ground rules, which both candidates have agreed to follow. To maintain civility and the issue-oriented nature of the forum, we do not allow candidates to make negative comments about other candidates' character or qualifications, but rather we ask them to address their own qualifications and vision for office and their views on issues facing California in the 37th District. We remind you again that this is not a debate, but rather a forum to allow candidates to put forth their views and qualifications. First, each candidate will make a brief opening statement, up to 2 minutes. I will then ask them questions, giving each candidate a maximum of 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds, to answer. We will alternate the order of responses. We didn't do a coin toss this time, so I'm just arbitrarily going to decide one or the other will begin. Sorry about that. A League member will be operating the electronic timer. We will take a 10-minute break partway through to allow screening and sorting of questions from the audience. The candidates will answer as many of those questions as possible within the remaining time available. Please note that we have plenty of questions, and it is not unwelcome to respond briefly or even to agree with your opponent. At the end, each candidate will have an opportunity to make a closing statement of no more than 2 minutes. Let's get started. All right, opening statements. Let's begin with Sari Dominguez. Ms. Dominguez, you're on. 2 minutes.
I'd like to thank the Santa Barbara League of Women's Voters for having this forum and inviting Greg and I here. I was born and raised in Santa Maria, California, and I've lived here most of my life. My family is also from here, and I'm about 8th generation Californian. Growing up, I lived in a wonderful neighborhood, and it was wonderful how I was raised and how I raised my children. But now, with my grandchildren, there's things that they can't do because it's not safe or it's not affordable and things like that. I got married out of high school with my high school sweetheart. We've been married 50 years. I have 3 beautiful sons and 5 grandchildren. I worked for the counties and government for 30 years. And my job was in IT. I actually worked for Santa Barbara County for 12 years, where I came down here to Santa Barbara and worked. And then I worked at all the different areas of Lompoc, Santa Maria, in my job. I left then, and I went up to Monterey County, and I became a business analyst, and actually integrated and supported their payroll, HR, benefit, financial system for 5,000 employees. I went to school, put myself to school, and I have a bachelor's degree in business management and a master's in organizational leadership. I bring through a leadership that's a servant leadership that I've used in my job, and I enjoyed it very much, working with people.
Thank you. Excellent timing. Mr. Hart, 2 minutes.
Well, first I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Community Environmental Council for making this forum available in this wonderful facility. It's really important to have an opportunity to speak directly to the voters about the issues that affect our lives directly. I grew up in Santa Barbara and attended local schools. I graduated from Santa Barbara City College and University of California, Santa Barbara. And my first job in public service was working as a legislative assistant for Assemblyman Jack O'Connell. I also served as the Deputy Executive Director of the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, where I worked on regional transportation and housing policies, trying to help build the expansion of the 101 freeway and provide rail service and bus transportation in Santa Barbara County. I also co-founded and led Transitions Preschool, which was a preschool for early childhood education. It was a small family business that I operated for 20 years. Very proud of that experience. I was appointed to the Santa Barbara City Planning Commission for 2 terms, and then was elected for 4 terms to the Santa Barbara City Council. Governor Davis appointed me to the California Coastal Commission, and I served 4 years on the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors before I was elected to the State Assembly. I'm running for re-election to help build economic opportunity for working families in California, to invest in public education and affordable health care, to make sure our neighborhoods are safe, and to provide protection for our environment, both the coastal resources that we all enjoy and the beautiful agricultural lands in California. I have a lot of experience at the local government level that I'm bringing to Sacramento, and I have a collegial, bipartisan approach to leadership that I think serves our community well. I'm pragmatic in trying to solve problems, and the things that I hear from communities, members in Santa Barbara County, I'm able to take directly to Sacramento and try and provide solutions to the problems we face here.
Thank you. The questions you will have 90 seconds to answer each of the questions, and I've already warned you that the timer has a little bit of a glitch, so just don't get shaken by it. All right, the first question has to do with innovation and jobs. What can the legislature do to encourage innovation and create jobs and vibrant communities? Mr. Hart, we'll start with you for this one.
Well, I'm really proud of the record that California has in producing jobs. In fact, California has the 5th largest economy in the world. If we were a separate country, we would be just behind Germany and Japan in our economic weight, which is a really significant achievement. In fact, last year, 20% of all the jobs in the United States were created in California. So we have a booming economy, but we also have our own challenges too. Here in Santa Barbara County, we have a technology sector, we have a tourism business, our educational institutions are tremendous job drivers for our local economy, and we have Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is on the cutting edge of space exploration and private industry, bringing jobs to our community. State of California is working hard with local governments to address the affordable housing crisis, which I hear from employers is the #1 issue that they face in recruiting and retraining employees here in our area. It's a significant issue that requires every level of government to work together to find solutions, and I'm committed to that work and will continue to be an advocate for job creation and economic opportunity for all Californians.
Ms. Dominguez?
Yes, Greg is correct. We are the 5th in our nation as far as our economy, but there's things that have happened in the last few years. And one of the big things that I think affected our community was the COVID and shutting down small businesses and the schools, and I think it hurt us a lot. Also, we have thousands of people that are leaving our state. I have my oldest son, I have sisters, 2 sisters, and a brother that have left. And it was because it's too expensive to live here. And so I'd like, if we can stop people from leaving, we would have a better revenue source. So we really need to bring people back and keep people here. We also, I noticed that the California Legislative and Analyst Office projects for the 2024-25 shortfall of $73 billion. That really concerns me. California shouldn't have a deficit. There is so much to offer. Like Greg said, we've got, and our community is beautiful with the farming and oil and all our other resources we have in this district.
Time. Thank you. This next question deals with homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse. What would you propose to address these issues? Do you believe that the care court approach is working in those areas where it has been implemented? And we'll begin this one with Ms. Dominguez.
Yes, the homeless is a very important issue in our communities because we do have a lot of homeless here. And it is a very complex situation. You know, I worked for behavioral health for 6 years, and I also know that it's going to take a lot of different agencies in this community, and it's the state also needs to help with allowing us to do things so we can help these people to get off drugs. And we need to stop the drugs because that is one of the first devastations that they're into. That's what creates their life to not be prosperous and not to be able to work. A lot of them do need care at different levels. A lot of them need mental health at different levels. And I know Greg Hart thought, you know, they need homes. Well, they're not going to be able to take care of themselves in their home until they can take care of themselves. And I think that's the goal, to try to help them to take care of themselves. And if they can't, then we do need facilities that can take care of them. So these are the things that I'd like to see our area be able to do and work with our community to see what we can do to help solve this homeless problem.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question.
Yeah, homelessness begins with the fact that affordable housing has become very difficult in our communities, and not just in Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County, but throughout the whole state of California. And the legislature is working very hard with local governments to try and increase the production of housing, because the best way to keep someone from being out on the street is to keep them housed. When folks do fall into that situation where, because of economics or medical bills or some dislocation in their family life, Oftentimes, people turn to drugs and alcohol as a way to medicate the difficult circumstances of living on the street. During the COVID pandemic, the County of Santa Barbara led the effort here locally to provide housing assistance to people who found themselves in that circumstances. And I was able to visit some of the programs that we were running, and I was shocked to see so many of our seniors living in their cars on the street because of economic circumstances. And it's really tragic to see that and to understand that that is a growing population of our homeless population in the county. But there are great programs here locally with temporary, small, tiny home housing that is dignified and supportive, with drug and alcohol treatment facilities available on site to get folks the help they need. And it's turning people's lives around. And it's a really good example of what we should be doing at the state level. And I have championed those programs in Sacramento as a model for the rest of California.
Thank you. The next question deals with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, or AI, has become very controversial, particularly as it has been used in some political campaigns and how it may impact the entertainment industry, which is vital to California's economy. How would you approach regulating the use of AI in California? And for this, we will begin with Mr. Hart.
You've identified a really important issue. It has tremendous positive implications for our society. The technology that California companies are pioneering can transform lives and really make government more efficient, provide great productivity in the private sector in terms of job creation and economic opportunities. But there are also tremendous risks from this technology, and we have to balance those two things, the risk and reward of embracing this technology. This year in the legislature, there were a number of bills that I thought were very appropriate that began to regulate this industry. I supported a number of bills to help rein in some of the potential excesses of artificial intelligence. Those bills were successful in getting out of the legislature, and some of them Governor Newsom signed into law, and others he vetoed. And I think in his veto message, he sent a challenge to the legislature to say we have to be very careful about the risk and reward of regulating this industry, because we do want the jobs, we do want the technological innovation, we want the rewards that can come from this technology, but we also have to be careful. So I'm looking forward to working directly with the governor and my colleagues next year in the legislature to find that right balance that makes sure that we have the appropriate protections against the risks of artificial intelligence, but also the benefits that come to Californians from that technology.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, same question.
Yes, AI is here. And my 30 years, I did go into computers and systems and things. And I remember when the first computers, desktops came out, and people were so worried they were going to lose their jobs. What it did was it allowed them to do more work. And with everything that I've seen that's been developed and put out there, a lot of it is for good, but there's also the other side that it can turn bad. And we really need to be careful. I remember when the credit cards came out with the tape on the back, my professor said, oh yeah, we're going to keep your information on this tape. It's going to be so secure. Well, we know what happens to our credit cards now. And the same thing could happen with AI. There were a couple bills that were just put in, AB 2655 and AB 2839. And I know Governor Newsom is trying to stop a lot of this AI that's happening, these little, what do you call it, deep fake media advertisements. And we need to be very careful, because if we say you can't do something, you're then denying us our First Amendment, freedom of speech. If you're going to use AI in a mock or whatever, if people don't understand what is not real and what is real, maybe there needs just to be identification that this is a AI produced thing.
Thank you. Our next question deals with housing, obviously an important subject already. And for this question, we will begin with Ms. Dominguez again. How do you propose to balance state concerns for providing housing with local control over community land use issues? What laws, if any, would you change, or what new laws would you propose?
Well, affordable housing And there's been laws that the state has been implementing, and again, sometimes I think the state is kind of controlling things. And I believe the state needs to be aware of what's happening and monitor and watch, but the communities need to be able to do what the communities need to do. Affordable housing, I guess it's been described that they're building these buildings and then they rent them out and subsidize. So somebody's subsidizing, which I believe is our tax dollars, and everything's renting. To me, affordable housing is building homes, single-family homes or in a condo, and make it affordable so first-time buyers can move in and own. I'm very adamant about people being able to own. My husband and I were able to buy our first home after 1 year of marriage, and we've been homeowners ever since. So to me, rent is important because it is your stepping stone to have some place to live. So I don't discount rentals, but we have to have a path to be able to own.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question.
Yeah, I recently had an experience that I think really illustrates the depth and complexity of this problem. I was at a grocery store recently, and the checker was talking to the folks in line and explaining that she didn't live in Santa Barbara or Goleta. She actually lived in the San Fernando Valley, and the grocery store brought her up and put her in a hotel across the street from the store and paid her overtime in order to cover the shifts at the grocery store to keep that business operating. I think that shows how difficult it has become to afford housing in our community. So local governments need to work with the state in partnership to provide more housing opportunities of all types for all income levels. We need additional rental housing, we need additional homeownership opportunities. We've fallen far behind on the construction of housing in our local communities to meet the need. Here in our county, I think we've done a good job of balancing growth appropriately with very strong design controls and constraints, and the result is a wonderful, beautiful community. But we have built affordable housing that is oftentimes some of the best projects in neighborhoods. So we have a lot to share with other communities around the state of California about how it can be done and how it can be done well. As I mentioned before when we were talking about homelessness, the County of Santa Barbara has been working with local nonprofit providers to develop tiny home villages in communities throughout the county to provide housing assistance to get people off the street into homes and turn their lives around.
Thank you. The next question also deals with housing, so it's somewhat related. Proposition 33 on the November ballot would repeal the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act of 1995, which currently prohibits local ordinances limiting initial residential rental rates for new units or rent increases for existing tenants in certain residential properties. Do you support or oppose this proposition? Why is that your position? For this one, we begin with Mr. Hart.
I support the goals of Proposition 33. As we talked about in the previous question, the cost of housing is getting out of reach of too many people in our communities, and rents are rising at rates that are completely unsustainable for the average working person. The legislation that is on the ballot is going to provide the voters an opportunity to consider this issue carefully. There are arguments for it and against it, and I think that they are compelling, and this issue is very complicated. The existing state law creates two paths. There is legislation that says local governments can create rent control for housing construction that was built prior to 1995, but local governments can't impose rent control on units that are built more recently. And the premise of that approach was to not create a disincentive for building new housing projects because of this supply-demand problem that we have. So I think that this is a really important issue that people need to weigh very carefully. We need the housing. We also need it to be affordable to renters. And I look forward to seeing how the voters judge this issue come November.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, same question.
Okay, Prop 33, I have studied it, and I am not for it. Again, rent control. And our government, I know they're trying to put laws into place where they think that they'll help with rent control and monitor what people are paying. I'm a very big advocate of economics and supply and demand. And if you just let things go, the people will monitor and change things and keep rent. If rent goes up too high, people just won't rent. And then it has to come down. There's other things we can do to help people to be able to afford their rents by creating good jobs. And so people can then earn the money they need to earn so they can pay those rents. But again, if people start putting too much money and trying to control the rents, I think it can get very dangerous, and it would be a very dangerous line to go down.
Thank you. The next question deals with public safety, and it is this. One of the more controversial propositions on the November ballot is Prop 36, which would reclassify certain misdemeanors such as simple drug possession or theft of under $950 as felonies if they are a third strike. In doing so, it undoes much of what Prop 47, passed by voters in 2014, put in place. The legislature has passed a package of 13 crime bills aimed at organized theft, but that do not change Prop 47 like Prop 36 does. Do you support or oppose Prop 36, and why is that your position? And for this, we'll begin with Ms. Dominguez.
I support Prop 36 because I am an advocate that we need to have consequences for behavior. And I was not happy when people are allowed to steal $950. I actually witnessed with my mother somebody running out of CVS with their basket full, throwing it in the car and taking off. And I taught my children not to steal. One of my sons stole some caps, and him and his cousin were in the backyard popping them. Well, he got taken back to the store and told the manager he stole these. So the manager told him, oh, you're not supposed to. And he never stole after that, because even though they're there, it's not your property. And people and children need to know you can't just take anything you want because it doesn't belong to you. When you have people stealing out of the groceries, a couple of things happen. One is that if they start losing revenue, the prices are going to go up and it affects us. Or they go out of business, and now you don't even have a retail store to be able to shop at.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question.
Every person deserves to feel safe in our community. Crime is an issue that affects all of us, and we need to make sure that the surest way to reduce crime is to make sure that local law enforcement and prosecuting agencies have the resources that they need to immediately intercede and arrest criminals and put them through the court system to get punished. The problem with Proposition 36 is that it returns us to the days when we were over-incarcerating people, and it is extremely expensive to have somebody in prison who could be rehabilitated and returned to society. So we spent decades locking up people for very long periods of time and not having any beneficial impact on crime rates. Today, the County Sheriff's Department has released statistics that show crime in Santa Barbara County is at the lowest level in the past 10 years, both violent and property crime. I think that demonstrates that local law enforcement's doing a really good job of arresting people and holding people accountable. The question is, what's the best way for us to deal with the prison population at the state level? Last year, I had the opportunity to visit Norway, where they have a different approach to incarceration. Their view is that crime is for courts are for punishing people, but that prisons are for making better neighbors. The idea is when someone is incarcerated, they're brought into the job training and drug treatment programs that will turn their lives around and make them a productive member of our society.
Thank you. Our next question deals with water, always an important issue around here. What needs to be done to meet the water needs of all Californians, including potable water, for agriculture, for urban uses, everything? And for this, we'll begin with Mr. Hart.
Well, the best way to have a reliable water system in the state of California is to have a very diverse system. And we have a very diverse system here in Santa Barbara County. We have groundwater, we have water from Lake Cachuma, we have a desalination facility, we're hooked up to state water, we have a system that is redundant and is able to be flexible during times of drought. The state of California needs to develop a similar system and not be so heavily reliant on the state water system. The first part of any kind of smart water policy is water conservation. And our residents here in Santa Barbara and South San Luis Obispo County have done a tremendous job. When we got into the drought situation and our local government asked people to conserve, local residents stepped up to that challenge and reduced water consumption by nearly 40%, setting some of the highest records in the state of California. So we know how precious water is in our community, and we have responded with smart policies that protect our water supplies in terms of drought opportunities. Agriculture is very efficient here. Residential construction is also very efficient. And the system that we have developed, which is diverse and very efficient, is the model that we should be using for the whole state of California.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, and same question.
Yes, you know, California is a drought state, and then we have our rains, and I know that Santa Maria up in North County, we've done a lot of drainage to get the water back down into the ground. Our agriculture depends on it. You know, we have Tibiscay, Twitchell Dam, and Lake Cachuma. I think there's still more that we need to do to save and have extra water saved, because we will have a drought season. I remember when we didn't have enough water and they asked us to please hold back, and we did. We changed our landscape to be more drought tolerant, and we did save. But then the following year, all our water bills went up because they didn't make enough money because we weren't using enough water. I remember that very vividly. We need to do a better job at getting different resources to save water, because we know we're going to have heavy drought years. So I would propose to have people look into that. There's lots of ways. You know, we have an ocean right next to us. We could do a desalination. We need to do more reservoirs, and maybe even think about some dams so that we can save our water so that it can be used and let out, so that we can keep our groundwater good and have water for our agriculture. We have a lot of agriculture in California, and it does need water. And so I think it's very important.
Thank you. Our next question deals with climate change and natural disasters. Climate change seems to be increasing the severity and frequency of natural disasters such as wildfires and floods. What does the legislature need to do to ensure that the state has adequate emergency services for dealing with natural or man-made disasters? Ms. Dominguez, we'll begin with you.
Not only is California known to be a drought state, but it also is a fire state. In fact, a lot of our plants depend on those fires so they can reproduce. But I do think there are times that we really need to look at our landscape and do a maintenance, fire maintenance, especially with people building out farther and farther near the forest. My middle son is a forest firefighter for the United States Forestry, and they used to go out and do some cutting back and back burning to keep the areas from burning over when the fires came. So I do think we need to do more of that in our state. These natural disasters, we're always going to have a year when something really gets bad. And when the fires are burning too hard and too much, yeah, we get a heavy rain, and it's going to cause mudslides and a lot of other problems. So we have to be aware that this is going to happen and be prepared, and also have a foresight on how to deal and take care of these things when we suppose that they could happen.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question.
Climate change is really the biggest challenge for our generation. The planet is warming, and as a consequence, natural disasters are becoming more frequent and more intense. And we've seen that here in Santa Barbara County with the devastating debris flow from the Thomas Fire to the natural fires that we have as a regular course of the composition of the backcountry and the urban wildland interface, in the close proximity of the forest to our community. Fortunately, California has the best firefighting system in the world. We are the envy of the planet, and our firefighters go all over the world to provide expert training and assistance to other governments around the globe. In fact, just this week, Governor Newsom sent special crews to Florida and North Carolina to intercede in the wake of the devastating hurricane that happened on the East Coast. We have invested significant additional resources in making sure we have air tankers to quickly get at fires. Here in Santa Barbara County, I was a member of the Board of Supervisors. We bought a surplus military helicopter that is able to deliver a huge payload very quickly to any fire that begins here locally. And since we've had that equipment online, we've been able to really tamp down fires at the very beginning of their origin and reduce the impacts on communities. But we do live in a very precarious place, and as our climate grows, we have to meet that challenge.
Thank you. Before we go on, I just want to remind the audience here that if you do have questions, to write them on the cards. We will be collecting them at the break, so just hang on to them for the moment. Thank you. Our next question deals with reproductive freedom. In light of the Dobbs decision, do you support any changes to California law regarding reproductive freedom? Mr. Hart, we'll start with you.
Yes, I am a strong proponent of a woman's right to her own choices about reproductive health care. I think that the decision that the Supreme Court made was a terrible one that has taken away rights from women that were enjoyed for generations. And I think that California has really tried to step into that void that is created by the federal ruling, the federal court ruling, and try to provide a safe haven for women who need to exercise their own choice about their own bodies in their own lives. It isn't appropriate for government to dictate to women what their future is in terms of their own choices about children and reproductive health. And I am strongly supportive of the legislation that California has led the country in providing access to reproductive health care. I'm the only candidate here tonight that's been supported and endorsed by Planned Parenthood, and I'm proud of that support, and look forward to working in the future with my colleagues in the legislature to make sure that women control their own body's destiny.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, same question, please.
I'm going to let you know I'm pro-life and always have been. Now, I do believe women have a right, people have a right to make choices to do what they want to do to their bodies. But what they need to do is they need to take care of their bodies and not allow themselves to get in predicaments of being pregnant. I believe we need to sit and educate young men and women to know the responsibility there is with having intercourse. And I would like to see what that means, me being pro-life. What it means is that I will never talk someone into having an abortion. I will not take somebody to go get an abortion. I do support CareNet, which will talk to the young girl and see all the possibilities they have before they decide to have an abortion. And then afterwards, they do post-care. They do post-care help after an abortion. And I think, I had my gallbladder out, but I didn't have to have post-care after my gallbladder, but you do when you have an abortion. It is not health to go and make decisions to have an abortion. So I'd like to see abortions become less and less because we're being smart and responsible about what we're doing with our bodies before we get pregnant.
Thank you. Next question deals with election security and the right to vote. What will you do to ensure opportunity for all eligible citizens to register and vote and to ensure the security of California elections? Ms. Dominguez, we start with you, please.
Yes, our election is one of the most sacred rights we have as a country. The election is what comes to be our constitutional right, and it is the only time that everybody's equal. When we vote, everybody's vote counts the same weight. It doesn't matter who you are. And I think we need to really think about how we're letting people vote. It's almost a free-for-all right now, and we need to take it serious. We need ID. We need to make sure you're a citizen if you're going to vote. And we need to encourage young people to vote and let them understand why, because it is very important. And so I really think a lot of the things we do with our elections, with voting, with candidates, I think there's a lot of work that we can do to improve on it so that our vote does count equally with everybody else's.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question, please.
Well, California has really worked hard to make sure that every citizen has a right and an opportunity to vote. We have eliminated many of the barriers that other states have enacted to discourage voter participation, and we have made it easy for people to vote. And that is the right of every citizen of this country to express their preferences in elections. I'm very proud of the fact that Ms. Dominguez and I are here standing before voters, asking for their support and talking directly about the issues that affect everybody's lives. Sadly, at the national level, there has been a discourse about election fairness and whether elections are operated professionally and in an upright manner, and I don't think that that has been helpful for our democracy. I think that here at the local level and in my experience at every election, the people who are in charge of those elections take their job very seriously. They are very professional and very careful with every vote. All of the highest standards of professionalism are in place to make sure that every vote is counted and every vote is treated with respect. I think that the dialogue that implies that elections are not fair is degrading to the democracy that we enjoy in our country, and I think it's something that we should stand up and speak loudly against. I am really proud of what we're doing in California. I think that people are able to access voting in a really easy, straightforward manner, and I think that we should continue to replicate that system across the country so that every American can vote easily and
Thank
readily.
you. Our next question deals with agriculture and resource protection. What legislation would you propose to preserve productive agricultural land and environmental resources? And we'll begin this with Mr. Hart.
Our agricultural community is one of our most important assets in Santa Barbara County. The open lands that agriculture, the grazing community, the cattle ranching that has proliferated in this area for thousands, hundreds of years, really contributes to the environment of our county. It protects us from wildfires, it helps regenerate the soil, it helps conserve water, and similarly, the field of row crop agriculture and the orchard agriculture that we have is some of the most sustainable in the state of California. We have really invested in technology that makes that work efficient. Last year I carried legislation that would try to enable farmers who were interested in getting drone technology to get help with state grant assistance to make that more financially feasible, because having that high technology enables even more precision with the application of pesticides and fertilizers in a way that makes agriculture more sustainable. I'm working directly with the farmers in our county on a regular basis to make sure that their livelihoods are protected and the jobs that they provide to our community are accessible to all of our residents. It's a huge part of our economy, and we need to be really good stewards of their business, just like they are really good stewards of our land.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, same question.
Actually, I do agree a lot with what Greg Hart is saying. Our agriculture and ranchers are wonderful and part of this community. My family were farmers and ranchers when they came here to America. And I still have relatives that are in the farming and ranching. So it's very important that they keep their livelihoods, and it goes down from generation to generation. I think it's very important that we really watch how much of our land is bought out by big corporations and how much we do keep locally. We do produce a lot of produce that feeds our world and feeds our country from here. And we want to keep it that way. I do not want them to lose their lands. I don't want them to have certain controls over them or regulations that keeps them from being farming. So I really watch out for that closely because I support them 100%.
Thank you. Our next question deals with higher education. Do you support free or low-cost higher education in California colleges and universities? How would you pay for any changes you support? Ms. Dominguez, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm an advocate for higher education if that's something that you want to pursue as a person. Now, not everybody is made to go to college and higher education because there's a lot of trades and there's lots of other jobs that are very beneficial and rewarding that people can choose to do. Of course, myself and my husband, we did achieve our higher education. We put ourselves through school. My youngest son, we actually put him through college. We had student loans. We had parent loans. And we paid them all off because that was our responsibility. I'm a lifelong learner, so I really enjoyed going back to school and learning. And I would encourage people to be able to go to school, and it needs to be affordable. And there's other ways. I know a lot of your schools get funding, and it needs to be accessible. I was not able to go to college after high school because my parents could not afford it. So I got married and had my family, and then I put myself through school. So it would be nice to have those choices out there and to make it affordable. And we need to make sure we have good schools that are teaching the children what they need to know to be thinkers, to be able to think for themselves, to make decisions and help this world be a better place.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question, please.
California's system of higher education is the best in the world. From our community colleges to the California State Universities to the University of California, we have the largest, most successful higher educational system in the world. 10 of the top 20 universities in the country that promote social mobility are in California. California community colleges now are largely free for students from a tuition standpoint. Obviously, the cost of books is still significant, and the cost of living is a real challenge. But many community colleges around the state are doing promise programs like we have here in Santa Barbara County to help defer those costs. I support those efforts and think that everything that we can do to make a college education more affordable and accessible to more students only benefits all of us. The future doctors and technical resources and researchers that we're going to need to sustain our economy and that seniors are going to need from a healthcare standpoint are the students that are in universities today. So investing in our future by investing in college education makes excellent economic sense and is the right thing to do. And it's one of the things that really defines California as a place that's a beacon for the nation.
Thank you. Our next question deals with health care. What would be your plan for health care for all Californians, and how would you fund it? Mr. Hart?
Well, healthcare really should be a right of all citizens, and we're working in California to expand access to affordable healthcare incrementally by including more and more communities in our state who are eligible for healthcare assistance, regardless of their citizenship status, because anyone who comes into an emergency room with a medical crisis needs care. They need the assistance that they need in order to be able to protect the health of all of us. If we have a situation where communicable diseases are being spread in the community, we need to intervene and make sure that people get the care that they need to stop those contamination or those health events from spreading. So California is committed to expanding access to affordable health care, and I have supported those bills in the legislature. How we do that incrementally depends on the economy and how we're doing financially. But so far, we have been able to maintain progress in expanding access to California, and I'm committed to continuing that progress.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez?
Yes, healthcare. My husband and I have always worked, so we always had healthcare through our business or through our job, employer, and and we paid our share of it. I had an experience when Obamacare came in. I lost my doctor. I had a niece that could not even get health care because if they wanted to charge her a lot for it, when here it's supposed to be free because she made good money but she was not working. So there was a lot of flaws, I think, that was created when we start doing social health care. I really think we need to have health care companies being able to provide health care for everyone, and it needs to be private because they're the ones that will compete against each other. And again, just talking about economics, when you are competitive, you will be able to have different price range for people that have different incomes to provide service that is equal for everyone. And we need to be really careful when we make social health care available to everybody. Because it can then start straining our taxes that we pay for. And how fair is it when it's free for poor, but people that make money, they have to still pay a lot?
Thank you. Our next question deals with taxes. Do you think the current state tax system is fair and adequate? What, if any, tax cuts or tax increases for voter approval would you support? Ms. Dominguez?
Well, like I said, I've had family members move out of California because it's too expensive, and taxes was a big issue. You know, California is capable of creating a lot of revenue because we have so much to offer here. And because people have left, businesses have closed down, big corporations have left, as we all know, we're losing all that revenue. So they're now going after taxing us because that's what's left. I'm an opponent for Prop 13. Howard Jarvis Tax Association has endorsed me. You know, they put out last year and got 1.43 million signatures, which then qualified them to put on the ballot a proposition to maintain Prop 13. But it got taken off the ballot. And that makes me worried because you had all these people speaking out and then they didn't get a voice. It's important that the state listens to people and sees their needs. And then we have Prop 5 that's going to reduce the percentage of being able to tax. Instead of 3/4, they only want a 55%. And these little things that are going to make it easier to go ahead and put taxes on people. And people can only be taxed so much.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question, please.
California has a very complicated tax system, and at the state level, revenues wildly vary from year to year because so much of our tax system at the state level is dependent on personal income taxes of very wealthy individuals, which is why over the last few years we have seen huge budget surpluses and then budget deficits because our tax system is too dependent on the very wealthy taxpayers who oftentimes are able to transfer their tax liability by deferred compensation. And so we have huge swings in our ability to meet the ongoing needs of California residents in our revenue side. Just 2 years ago, we had more than $100 billion surplus. This past year, we had about a $50 billion deficit. We were able to close that deficit by being prudent and smart and reducing expenditures and using some of the reserve funds that had been built up over years to prevent that kind of a difficult situation fiscally when we encountered it. Fortunately, this year, tax revenues are coming back very strong, and I think that next year's budget will be a much easier thing. But the priority for government at every level is to be efficient with every single dollar that taxpayers contribute to our joint efforts collectively to repair roads, to provide schools, to provide health care, and to take care of our environment. And these are critical issues that everyone cares deeply about, and the key for us is to be efficient with every taxpayer dollar.
Thank you. Our next question deals with insurance for California residents. Many Californians, including in this area, have seen their homeowners insurance canceled by companies that have provided their coverage for many years. When and if they are able to find alternative coverage, either through the California FAIR Plan or with other carriers, the cost has usually tripled. Is there anything that you think the legislature can or should do to mitigate this problem for California residents? And for this, we'll begin with Mr. Hart.
Yes, this is a significant challenge, and it's directly related to the issue of climate change. As our climate warms, the increased incidence and severity of fires and floods increases, and insurance companies have lost a lot of money over the past few years in claims to respond to those events. Unfortunately, many of those companies have decided to leave the state of California because they can't make a profit selling insurance in California at the rates that they were charging. The insurance commissioner is working now on a plan to try and bring those companies back to create the competition that could reduce rates. And two of the proposals that they're looking at is allowing insurance companies to use forward projections on risk rather than just looking back. That we have one of the most highly regulated insurance industries in the country here in California that protects consumers. But one of the restrictions of that is that insurance companies can only look backward at the incidence of risk, not project forward on the future. And as our climate changes and that risk profile changes, their exposure becomes greater. And so the insurance commissioner is working with the industry right now to change that, to allow them to look into the future to predict risk. There's also a problem with reinsurance. Insurance companies depend on being able to get insurance on their policies to protect them against risk. And in California, we unnecessarily limit their ability to pass those costs on to consumers.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, same question.
Yes, I'm very aware of this happening with our insurances, and yes, I know the bad fires we've had and the costs that came down to these people's homes they lost. I did talk to an agent and asked him what's going on, and he told me it's the cost to rebuild, it's the cost it cost here in California is too expensive, that the premiums that they were charging weren't enough to cover cost. Now, I like the idea that they're bringing back different agents back into California because we need to bring them in there and start getting competitive. But again, it's the cost that things cost here in California. We need to bring our costs down because it's getting harder for businesses, it's getting harder for people to be paying high prices, and now we see our insurance companies are having a hard time trying to pay to rebuild a home and compared to the cost that they had. And again, with these fires and stuff, if we do more proactive watching what the fires and start maintaining them off season, make sure we have good water supply for our droughts, that maybe we can not have so many crises when we do have our fires and we do have our rains.
Thank you. One last question, and then we will take a short break, collect the audience questions, come back and ask those questions, and then have our candidates' closing statements. And the final question deals with the responsibilities of the office. How do you plan to balance the needs of your district with the needs of the state of California as a whole? Ms. Dominguez, you're on.
Like I said, I'm up in North County most of the time, but I've been down here to South County. I've worked down here in South County. I've worked in Lompoc. I've worked all around, and I have relatives that live in Guadalupe and Pomo, and so I kind of see the needs. We're a very diverse community, and so I'm very aware of all this diversity, and I care for all the constituents, poor, rich, whatever cultures they have. And we have a lot of work to do because we do have a diversity. I hope to bring positive change here in our community and work up at the state and get good legislation and bills passed that are going to help most or all our constituents and not just a few. We end up trying to be inclusive, but what's happening is we're causing division because the inclusiveness is just a small piece of somebody. And we really need to look at our county and everybody as a whole and understand what the needs are and help them. So I hope I bring all that knowledge, and of course I'm looking for it. I've been enjoying meeting all my constituents, listening to what their needs are, and hearing them and finding out, okay, that's what we need to do, and I'll go up there and see what I can do.
Mr. Hart, same question.
The best part of my job is meeting with constituents and trying to solve problems at the local level. I make it a regular practice of doing sidewalk office hours in every community in the district, from Carpinteria to Cuyama to Guadalupe and all the way into San Luis Obispo County and Nipomo and Orchid, Santa Maria, Lompoc, Goleta, Montecito. And the thing I hear the most from local residents is that they want representation that is accessible, and that being available to hear what is of the most highest concern is the first responsibility that I have. I have this wonderful team of folks in my district offices, both here in Santa Barbara and in Santa Barbara, who are working directly with constituents to solve problems. I heard a situation just today where somebody called because they were trying to get their driver's license renewed at the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they weren't able to actually pay in person, despite the fact that they went out to the Goleta DMV. They called our office for assistance. We were able to connect them with the Department of Motor Vehicles. In a couple hours, they were back in business and calling us and thanking us. I think that's a critical part of being a state representative, is to connect our constituents to the resources that we have in the state of California, and to be accessible and to listen carefully. The legislation that I bring into play in Sacramento is largely from conversations that I have with local residents about real problems in our communities that we need to solve. I work with my Republican colleagues, I work with my local government partners to fix problems that I hear from our constituents about.
Thank you both very much. I really appreciate your succinctness and your attention to the time. I have gotten through more questions than I think I ever have on any forum that I've moderated in the time that we have. So thank you for that. It's been very good. We'll take a 5 to 6 minute break, collect the audience questions, come back and ask as many of those as we have time for, and then have the closing statement. So we'll take a break now, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back from our break. We have time, I think, for 3 questions. And again, if you would be as succinct as possible in your answers, it would be appreciated. In some cases, I've reworded the question slightly to make it a little clearer. The first one would be, what would you do to limit the flood of regulations and to improve transparency between the state government and the citizens of California? And we'll start, see, who did we end it? We ended with Mr. Hart, so we'll start this one with Mr. Hart.
That's a great question, and there's a real current answer to that right now. The California State Legislature is in special session because Governor Newsom wanted us to address the problem of escalating gas prices. It's a problem that affects everybody, and for the past few years, there's been a tremendous surge in gas prices, up to about $7 a gallon. And so the governor wants the legislature to act, and he proposed legislation that I am now the author of to require refineries to have a minimum inventory when they are doing maintenance on their infrastructure. The problem has been in the past that there are only 4 companies that control 90% of the supply of gasoline in the state of California. So those companies have tremendous market power. And when one of those refineries, goes offline, prices spike up. So the idea is very simple, that we would require those companies to have a minimum level of inventory so that those prices wouldn't spike. Initially, the governor wanted that proposal to be finished in about a week and just quickly enact his ideas. The California Assembly said, no, we need to have a process, we need to have hearings, we need to consider input from stakeholders, and as the author of the bill, I supported that effort, and we have had a series of hearings, about 16 hours of testimony from stakeholders and experts about this policy, and my bill is better as a result of that, and it will be going to the Senate next week, where they will have hearings to further improve on the product. Ultimately, I'm hopeful that the governor will sign that bill into law.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, same question.
Well, I do feel that our state should be transparent on everything they do. And pretty much if you do go online, you can watch what they're talking about in session. You can see the proposals that are coming out. I know it's a lot because they have thousands that go through the desk. But there's a lot of organizations that are watching for you. As an assembly person, I would like to keep my constituents informed on things that are affecting this area directly with newsletters and things like that. As far as the oil, if they are going to maintain the refinery, then that means they're going to have to produce more oil if they got to maintain it. And I know that there's been a push to shut down the oils. Again, I have a dear friend that's big oil, and he was saying how they've shut things down. And I know Mr. Hart's a component of shutting down oil, but I think it's a wonderful resource we have here in California. We have the Monterey Shoals, and I think we need to use that as a resource because we still need oil. We need it for everything. My husband keeps joking when we're driving in the car, oh, look at the road. What do you think it's made out of? So that's our little joke. But so we need to really watch the regulations and what we're putting on these oil companies so that we do keep them productive and that they can drill.
Thank you. The next question, and for this one we will begin with Ms. Dominguez. What should be the legislature's role in developing curriculum in public schools and deciding what materials should be made available to students in classrooms and school libraries?
Well, yes, I do have a concern about the curriculum that's coming down from our state. And I know Newsom says, well, we've had parents that are deciding this curriculum. Well, I think the state needs to oversee and not so much decide and put into bills what our curriculum. Because we're such a diverse state and community, I think if you've got good educators and good people running your schools, that they should be putting in a curriculum that meets the needs of their children. And we need to be very careful because I think schools should only be teaching your reading, math, arithmetic, little history, more your core subjects. But they've seemed to gotten into now the child's emotional learning, their physical learning, And they're also doing things that are not appropriate. And I say this because I have started a chapter for Moms for Liberty here in Santa Barbara County, because I heard things and I thought, no, not here. It's here. And it's here and it's bad. So I'm an advocate for our children and for our parents. And the parents should have the first say with whatever their child's doing. And we need to make sure that we're teaching our children and teaching them well, and not teaching them things that is inappropriate for a child.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, same question.
Public education is the great equalizer in our society. It gives an opportunity for students to step up the economic ladder by learning lessons that will serve them for a lifetime. And learning to be a lifetime learner is really one of the most important things. My father was the library director for the city and county of Santa Barbara, so books were very important to me and as a young person. And I remember dinner table conversation when I was a teenager about members of the community who were trying to censor books in the local libraries. That sadly is happening today, and is happening in our schools. I personally believe that every student should be taught how to make critical decisions for themselves and to have access to information that they can work through and understand and make smart decisions about. I don't think it's appropriate that we ban books in schools and libraries. I think freedom of information is one of the core values of our country and our state. Our professional educators in schools, teachers, are doing a fabulous job taking care of our students and representing intellectual rigor and teaching history as it exists, and informing students about the good parts of our history and the bad parts of our history, so that we can be better prepared to make the right kind of decisions in the future. I'm a strong advocate of teachers and their role in public education, and I think parents largely support the work that's going on in our schools.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, timer. This will be our last question before we go to closing statements. And for this one, we'll begin with Mr. Hart. What is your opinion on health care for transgender minors?
Well, I think every person in our community deserves respect. LGBTQ students face tremendous challenges, and our schools need to be supportive of them like they are all students. Everyone in our community deserves respect and dignity, and I think that providing health care for everyone in our community is a basic fundamental right. So I think that the divisive discourse that is separating out students because of their gender identification is really sad and destructive for the mental health of those individuals that are dealing with very difficult challenges many times. And we have an epidemic of mental health issues in our young population. We need to be doing more to nurture and respect the differences and celebrate the contributions of every student in every school, who should feel safe and welcome and embraced by our educational institutions.
Ms. Gonzalez. I'm sorry, Ms. Dominguez.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I agree with Mr. Hart on everybody needs to be respected. And that's the goal to teach children, is that you respect everybody, no matter what their differences, no matter what they look like. Now, this LGBT community, something's going on now, because it's not just all of a sudden there's a child that might have a thought or a difference or feel different. I'm fine with that if that's truly what's happening, and the child needs to be guided and needs to be supported or whatever. But when you start talking about a child that decides they want to be a boy or a girl, I wanted to be a boy. I'm glad I wasn't trans. And there's a lot of people, in fact, I support the Gay for Groomers because they're saying the same thing. And we're talking about to change you from a girl to a boy before puberty is lifelong decision. Children should not be making lifelong decisions. Work with them, deal with them, let them go through and be a citizen, let them go through puberty, and then when they become an adult, if they're really still feeling strong about that, that's when the decision should be made. But I'm not putting down this happening, but what's happening, because I've witnessed it, is they're starting to make children think they are.
Thank you. All right, we will now go to our closing statements. For the opening statements, we began, I believe we began with Ms. Dominguez and then Mr. Hart. So for our closing statements, we will begin with Mr. Hart and close with Ms. Dominguez. 2 minutes.
Thank you again for watching this debate, our forum. The opportunity to talk with Ms. Dominguez about the issues that affect all of us has been really, I think, a positive experience. I see myself as a realistic optimist. I feel like California is a real gem in the country. We have so much great to celebrate. We have our wonderful weather. We have the cultural contributions of the entertainment industry. The technology industry in Silicon Valley and here in the Central Coast is contributing to the increase in economic opportunities for so many Californians. But we do have many challenges, and we spent a lot of time today talking about those, and I think that it's appropriate to hear from both of us about what we'll do about these issues if we're elected to the State Assembly. I intend to continue to do the job, if I'm re-elected, that I have been doing for the past 2 years, which is bringing people together, reaching out into the community and talking to our constituents and finding solutions to real problems. The issues that we confront on a daily basis are very complex, and they require thoughtfulness and care in providing solutions. And I think that that's the way I've approached this job. I work directly with my constituents by going out with sidewalk office hours and hearing from them the problems that they bring to me about state government and local government. We try to bring solutions to them. And in doing that, I think it informs ideas that I bring to Sacramento for legislation. The bills that I've been able to get passed into law are directly related to local issues and local problems, and I think they are the result of bipartisan collaborative work in Sacramento that I'm personally very proud of and would be honored to have the opportunity to continue to serve the residents of South San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County for the next 2 years in the State Assembly.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, your closing statement, please.
Responsibility, common sense, morality, and accountability. Those are my values. I raised my children with those values. I look and I analyze and I think about my decisions based on those values. And I see a lot of those values aren't being upheld up in the state. There's a lot of things that are going up there that don't align with those values. That is what I will bring up there. I also have the capability and the experience to be able to do a great job up there. When I work hard, and that's what I will do when I'm up there at the state. My name is Sari Dominguez, and I'm running for State Assembly, District 37, and I hope you vote for me.
Thank you very much. I have a few closing remarks. Again, thanks to the Community Environmental Council for the use of this space, to TV Santa Barbara for the live streaming and recording of the forum, to Sylvia Uribe of Transil Pro for translation services, to our co-sponsor Santa Barbara Goleta Valley AAUW, and the volunteers of the League and AAUW who helped with this forum. Also, thank you to the candidates for joining us this evening. We appreciate your commitment to serve our community. Thank you to everyone here and at home who has listened to this forum. We hope you found the program informative and useful as you prepare to vote. We will be discussing the pros and cons of the statewide propositions that will appear on your ballot at a virtual forum on Wednesday, October 9th at 5 p.m. We hope that you will join us for that. It will be broadcast from the TV Santa Barbara studio. Go to the League website, lwvsantabarbara.org, for more information and the Zoom link to attend this webinar format forum. On Thursday, October 10th, we are holding a candidate forum for those running for mayor and city council for Goleta. It will be held at the Goleta Union School District Boardroom at 401 North Fairview in Goleta, starting at 6 p.m. Please tell any of your friends who live in Goleta about this forum. Finally, please make sure that you are correctly registered to vote and vote. Your vote matters. Mail-in ballots will be mailed out by the county beginning on Monday, October 7th. You can then mail them in or drop them off at designated places. Information on where you can drop off your ballots instead of mailing it will be, excuse me, all right, I confused myself. Information on where you can drop off your ballot instead of mailing it, the address of all of the county's drop-off boxes, and the locations where you can vote in person, if you so choose, will be included in the packet of information you will receive with your ballot. So thank you all, and good night.
Thank you. I do too. Look forward to more. I don't know, we have more, but.